moving on to today, I'm delighted, as I said, to have Albert here today. I don't know how many of you have been out at the Science Park, but if you haven't, you should. It's an extremely impressive development. And I think the thing that struck me, I actually went last week. I went to Rehab Robotics, which is a company that is developing a hand device to bring back hand function to people with spinal cord injuries and stroke. I have a personal interest in this because of my son, and I must say this is what really touched me. It's a kind of an arcane concept. We can talk about technology being part of a key part of Hong Kong's future, which it is. But I think when you actually go out and see what is being done in the science park, which is actually cutting edge science, which will actually improve quality of life for people, this is when it really brings home how important what Albert and his operation out there are doing. So, I mean, and I know that there's also been a big development in the past week, which makes your talk today particularly relevant, which is the announcement of the Hong Kong Shenzhen Lok Ma Chau Loop, which is, I think we'll be talking about as well. So I think, Albert, you will talk about your background, so I don't need to go into all of that. So without any further ado, I'd like to ask you to come up and to the stage. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Albert. I'm the CEO of the Hong Kong Science Park. A little bit of my background. I'm not a civil servant, so first of all, thank God. Science Park is a government-owned statutory body. It's 100% owned by the government, but it's run like a commercial operation. We've been around 15 years. I'll talk a little bit more about what we do and what's happening there. One of the thing that Eric talked about was the rehab of robotics. We're really proud of that. Anyway, a little bit about myself. I'm a local Hong Kong born, educated, but I've spent all my life working for multinationals. My last 15 years were with General Electric, GE. I actually did a lot of M&A with Jack Welch 16 years ago. My last position before coming back to Hong Kong was I actually run GE Oil and Gas China and GE Industrial Solutions. So my background is multinational and technology and industrial kind of background and commercial. And again, I have not worked for the government. I'm not working for the government yet. So that probably give a little bit of interest about how Hong Kong runs innovation technology, because they bring in people like me. And by the way, Janet is here. Janet is my CMO for Science Park. She's a background of Harvard and Columbia and Intel. So we have people like us running innovation technology. But what I want to go through in the next 20 minutes is I will spend a little bit of time talking about what is innovation. And then I will talk about Hong Kong and then Science Park. And finally, I will talk about the loop. But the first chart is, this is Thomas Edison. I came from GE, and Thomas Edison is our founder. And he's probably the most talked about innovator in the world. He invented the light bulb and the Sinophone and everything. I want to just, this is not a presentation, it's just a graphic to help you think. There's two words, innovation and invention. I'm not going to give an answer, but you think about why there are two different words. And I would argue that innovation is not invention. And I'm going to show you a few examples, and you can think about, you don't have to agree with me, but I want to talk about what is innovation, what are we doing? I think a lot of people will talk about recent innovation would be smartphone and iPad. And in the old days, people would say when you talk about innovation, it's about finding out what the customer want and go ahead and invent it. Actually, that's what Edison said. I found out what the world want and then I invent it. But I will argue that because 10 years ago, who would tell you that I want an iPad? It doesn't exist. So the disruptive innovation is one that changes the world, changes your habit, right? And also the other thing people talk about is that innovation has to be something invented, something really new. Think about it, the smartphone, the iPad doesn't have anything new. It's a computer, it's a touchpad, it's MP3, all these things put together. I will argue that it's nothing new, it's nothing that has been invented, but someone is smart enough to put them together and create a new experience. So the real disruptive technology is that, imagine 10 years ago, would you say that I want an iPad? I don't think so. If you have thought about that, you're very much in the front. So I think I want you to think about it. So it's probably not invention, but how do you change the world? How do you change a habit? I want to show you another example. 120 years ago, the only mode of transportation is your horse carriage. And if you think about innovation of transportation, what is it? You want a faster horse? You want a horse that eats less? You want a horse that doesn't sleep? That's the innovation. The real innovation, the breakthrough, is the automobile. But again, think about it. I mean, 120 years ago, nobody would say, I want an internal combustion engine, although that technology is already available. How do you make it happen now? This points to another thing. The first two things I was talking about is that innovation doesn't have to be new, doesn't have to be an invention, and nobody really knows that you want it. Now, the third thing is about you have to change a habit, because you have to learn to drive, you have to have the new roads, you have to have the petrol stations, the whole infrastructure to support it. Otherwise, automobile would not have happened. And by the way, think about it, 120 years ago, when someone drives a car, it would be dangerous, too fast. Nobody knows how to do it. So the disruptive innovation is not really about something new. It's not an invention. It's about the infrastructure and change of habits. Imagine the guy who drives a horse and driving a car is totally different. He will resist it because it's too fast. It's too dangerous. But fast is what you want, actually, right? So it's, you have to really change it. And then the next innovation I want you to think about is Uber. Uber is not new technology. But what it challenges is the fourth point is regulatory. I mean, I use Uber a lot when I'm in the US and in Hong Kong. But my lawyer friends keep telling me that don't use it because it's illegal. Because in most cases, technologies, the regulators do not know how to deal with it. They just do not know how to deal with it. Uber is a classic example. It's a very simple example. I see things, I really love Uber because if you think about the top left-hand corner, taxis, everybody in Hong Kong has gone through this. In a typhoon, in a rainstorm, you will not be able to get a taxi. But you can call an Uber all the time, anytime. That's not invention, that's just change of habit. But the regulators do not know how to deal with it. I've been, in the science park, we're seeing companies that, I'll give you another example about regulatory, is that when you think about the latest medical devices, medicine, stem cell. A stem cell is not a drug. Micro-robot that goes into your body, it's not a drug. But the regulatory bodies is trying to put into FDA, drug regulation. It just doesn't work. So regulatory is another big roadblock that we need to deal with. And going on the example in transportation is autonomous driving. The future of transportation is that it's all autonomous driving. The bottom right graphic is the future, that there's no traffic light because everything just go. You don't need anything. And our children, our grandchildren do not need a driving license. It's just called Uber. Downstairs, I go and just go. I don't need to drive. Now, that will be the future that people do not comprehend. But think about 120 years ago, you have a horse carriage and automobile. And think about the future of bottom right, that traffic will be so easy. Now, the other thing that you need to think about is the last point, is the ethical issue. Is that if an autonomous driving car hits somebody or a robot kills somebody, who's responsible? I cannot answer the question. But these are all the things that we need to think about. So I just spent the past few minutes talking about how do we look at innovation and technologies. First of all, it's not necessarily invention. In fact, the way I look at it is that innovation is not invention. It's about someone putting a business model together and change the world. That is disruptive. And then how do we see the future? How do we come up with a regulatory bodies and ethical and all these things to drive the new world? And I think that in the past 20, 30 years, this field has changed a lot. And in the coming years, I can talk a lot about future trends in terms of robotics and robot replacing human beings and medicine and stem cell and stuff like that. But a lot of things that we see is happening, big data, all these things. If I have time, I can share that. I want to start talking a little bit about Hong Kong. And given my background, I've never worked in Hong Kong. I haven't really worked in Hong Kong so much, but I came back to Hong Kong, worked for Science Park, because I really have a passion to grow the future of Hong Kong. I've been on this job for I've been in Science Park for less than a year and a CEO job for about 6 months. I think we have to do it. The challenges are the mindset, the culture of the society. Whether or not, a lot of people ask me, oh, you think Hong Kong can do technology? Shenzhen across the border, Singapore doing this, doing that. People talk about low tech, high tech, can we do that? And then we talk a lot about the government. The government is, I think, for those of us who've been in Hong Kong long enough, you see the difference between the current government and the previous government, the way they put emphasis onto technology innovation. And then why Hong Kong? I mean, I'm seeing a lot of companies trying to come to Hong Kong doing technology innovation, and for various reasons, for example, intellectual properties protection, rule of law, transparency, but most importantly, Hong Kong is the back door to the biggest market in the world. You want to develop your technology, your product, so that you can serve a big market. China is still the biggest market in the world, and we have to find ways to leverage that. So I think Hong Kong has to do technology and innovation, and I will show you this page that I think I've been around long enough in Hong Kong, and I've seen the low tech and moving to the north. In the past 30 years, Hong Kong, well, 20 years ago, Hong Kong was one of the manufacturing hubs in the world, one of the 4 little dragons. And being an industrialist, I see that we're losing it. The reason is that a couple of reasons. I think those of us who speak Chinese know the low tech, high tech pun. I keep saying it's not funny. When I first heard it 10, 15 years ago, it's funny. Low tech is you make a lot of money, high tech you failed. It's not it's not funny anymore because the low tech mindset is all about chasing the labor arbitrage. The word I use is labor arbitrage. Hong Kong is too expensive, you go to Guangdong. Guangdong is too expensive, you go to Hunan, and then you go to Cambodia. Very soon you're going to go to Africa. The new world is not about labor arbitrage. You cannot chase that. In fact, when I work for GE, one of the things that we are talking about a lot is that in the next 20 years, in the past 20 years, China was the world factory. In the next 20 years, the manufacturing giant is going to be US and Germany. They will get back their manufacturing because it's not about labor anymore, it's about advanced manufacturing. And I really believe it. And my old company in GE, we're putting a lot of investment into robotics, in advanced manufacturing in the US. So the low-tech, high-tech thing is history. We should stop thinking about it. By the way, one of the industrialists that I met in Hong Kong, he told me that in the past 30 years, he's made a lot of money by making one product for 20 years. And that product is a VHS tape. Do you know what a VHS tape? The young people probably do not know that. He's done that for 20 years, one product. So all he's looking for is low-cost land and low-cost labor. There's no need for technology innovation, maybe a little bit of innovation to take cost out. But I think you all know that there are a lot of industrialists from Hong Kong that do things like that, textile or VHS tape. I really thought that was a good discussion for you. But there's a lot of industrialists in Hong Kong who make a lot of money like that. But my point is that the low-tech view is history, and the government has come to realize that. I think many of you who are following the government in Hong Kong, the previous government has said the same things. They said low-tech and high-tech. The latest government, the current government is really interested in it. I'm just going to show you some data. Don't read it. It's just telling you that manufacturing is going down in Hong Kong in the past 30 years. The top left is about manufacturing share of GDP from 6% to 1.2%. Labor force on the top right. The bottom left is about the domestic export of high-tech products. And then the bottom right is really scary. When you look at GDP as a percentage of manufacturing as a percent of GDP, Hong Kong is very, very small compared with the neighboring countries. So it is a reality that manufacturing technology is moving away from Hong Kong, has been moving away from Hong Kong. I'll just show you another data. There was a study by Cornell Inset. They do that every year, Innovation Index for all the countries in the world. Hong Kong used to rank number 4, the brown curve, the orange curve. And we're going down from 4 to 8 and then now 14th. Well, first of all, 14 is not so bad. Come on. More than 100 countries, you're 14th in the world. However, if you look deep into it, they have two sub-indexes. One of them is innovation input. We rank number 2 in the world. Innovation output, we rank number 25th in the world. So on aggregate, we are 14th. So the good news is that input is good. Input means infrastructure, human capital, institution, market access. I think you can all visualize all these. The government is supportive. We have availability of talents. Young people are very good in science and technology. But when it comes to output, it means knowledge and technology transfer, creativity. Again, I think it all resonates with a lot of you who has been around in Hong Kong long enough, that we need to find ways to commercialize and make the creative output out of this innovation. So I think this is good news, bad news kind of things. It's not perfect. 14 is not so bad, but number 2 in the world in input is a good thing. A big part of it has to do with the government's input, and I think what we need to do is really help the science part, the innovation entrepreneur succeed. We have a biggest market in the world behind us. Question is how we materialize it, how do we commercialize it? I want to talk a little bit about Science Park. Like Eric is saying, if you have not been to the Science Park, you should. This is a 22 hectares of land. We have about 3 million square foot of space. We have about 20 buildings. It's on the Tolo Harbor. And if you like jogging and cycling, this is a perfect place. Parking is very cheap, $12 an hour. Just go there. By the way, on the weekend, there's a lot of people there. Science Park has been around 15 years. It's a government-owned body. Today, we have 620 companies working in there. Of the 620 companies, 250 are startups. So we run an innovation program, an incubation program. So if you have a technology that you want to commercialize, we will help you, we will teach you how to do businesses. We will help you do contracts and find investments and do R&D development. We'll groom you from zero to business. Of the 620 companies, we have 12,000 people working in the Science Park. And by the way, we have 23 restaurants and all kinds of restaurants. And by the way, Eric has been there once. And I really encourage you to just drive there, spend an afternoon or have lunch there. You will like it. What we wanted to build is an ecosystem where like-minded people can work together, like electronic, IT, green tech, biotech, material. We have 12,000 young people working there. I've been there for about 11 months, and I really like it because I feel young. It seems like you're still in the university campus. It is a pretty vibrant environment. It's been around 15 years. We have some big names like Philips, TCL, Toshiba, Hitachi, a lot of big companies and a number of small companies. So we have been charged with the job to drive the ecosystem of innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, these 3 things: technology, innovation, entrepreneurship. And we are seeing a lot of growth in this area. I was actually very surprised that the growth of entrepreneurship, the young startup, is growing very, very quickly. So I really encourage you to drive there and have a look. I want to talk a number of outstanding technology that we found in the Science Park. The one on the top right-hand side, Hand of Hope, that's the one that Eric was talking about. I want to make it very simple. When your hand moves, it's not because of your hand, it's because some muscles here stimulates your tendons. So for the people with strokes or some spinal cord injury, what this guy does is that he put a sensor here, amplify your signal, and train your hands. All right? I actually tried it myself, and I just relaxed, and the thing about moving, it just moved. It's pretty amazing. And this is a pattern coming from Hong Kong, and he has been with us for about 2 years, and he's now commercializing. The challenge is that this is another story. He started his company about 2 years ago, and he sold 53% of his company to a pre-IPO medical device company. In my opinion, I think it's a wrong decision. He should have waited and make the best out of it. But it's okay. He makes some money. That IPO, actually, by the way, when the IPO came, although he has not sold a lot of businesses, this Hand of Hope hasn't been sold so many. Half of that prospectus is about him. And that IPO got very good multiple. It's all about technology element. Inside Robotics, the one on the top left, he's been very successful. I mean, if you read the TVB news, he's been on news a lot. What they do is they detect wildfire through a distance by geographic information system and sensing and everything. They have done businesses in Mongolia, in mainland China, and they've been. These two are the incubators that we developed. The bottom left T21. This is one that we're really proud of it. This guy was potentially a Nobel laureate. Basically, what it does is that it's prenatal screening. It's diagnostic. In the old days, well, currently, if you want to screen your unborn child for genetic diseases, you have to take some fluid from the womb. That is risky. This professor from Hong Kong, Chinese U, has found a way to take blood from mother and separate the genes, the DNA of the baby from mother, and he screened for genetic diseases. That's his first company, and he's doing it in Hong Kong and China, and he's licensing his technology in the US. In the past 3 years, the licensee in the US has sold his business to a major multinational for $200 million. So he's starting his second and third companies now, and he's not going to do the licensing in the US anymore. He's going to do it himself. And the latest one that he's doing is that 2 years ago, he took 20,000 subjects in Hong Kong and took their blood, random people, just to screen for a certain type of cancer. And he found 32 of them in stage 1 of a particular cancer. Those 32 guys are really lucky, because in stage 1, he's got 95% of curing. If he goes to stage 2, he will only 50%. He's going to commercialize this one all by himself. So what he needs is not so much about technology, but also commercialization. How do you find the investment? How do you do the distribution? So these are very exciting examples. And I was actually very surprised that Hong Kong has good technology people like that think very positively. Okay, so this is the loop. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So this is the map of Hong Kong. This is actually right next to Lok Ma Chau. The history of this is that the river used to flow like this, right, like the U. And legally, between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, the border is the middle of the river. So, and the river was straightened before 1997. So that piece of land used to belong to Shenzhen. Now, after the river is straightened, it belongs to Hong Kong. So actually, the State Council of China has actually declared that before 97, I think between 97, that this piece of land belongs to Hong Kong. But Shenzhen has been arguing that that belongs to Shenzhen. That's the controversy. But anyway, right now, it has been decided that it's given to Hong Kong, and will be given to Hong Kong Science Park to build the next science park in the next whatever years. So we're really glad that we're going to take that up. It is right across the border for Shenzhen. It is only 20 minutes drive from the science park. It is at the border, but it's not so bad. I think it is a huge opportunity for us to give more space for people to do collaborative laboratories, to do R&D, to build an even bigger innovation technology ecosystem. So I'm really excited about this. It's been announced only for 1 week, so I'll try my best to answer questions, but forgive me if I cannot, because some of that could be political, and I will try to avoid it. So I think taken enough time, but I want to give you one thing to think about. This is a book I read recently, 0 to 1. Is that when you talk to entrepreneur like Steve Jobs and whoever, ask yourself, do you have one thing that only you believe in, that nobody else believes in? What is that important truth that only few people agree with you? If you don't have anything, then you're one of us. But if you have one thing that you think only you believe in and it's true, you go ahead and do it. I think this is profound. I have some of that in mind, but I want you to think about this one. I read this book in about 2 hours, but that one word, that one phrase I pick up, but I really want to think about it. This is the core of technology, innovation, entrepreneurship. Okay? I hope I give a good overview of how I look at things and Hong Kong landscape, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much. Very interesting. So,
hi, my name is Chin Chin, and I would like to ask a question about how your organization could help with the way that the government thinks about regulations. As you know, like you pointed out, the regulators sometimes are slow to catch up with disruptive technologies like Uber or fintech or the way you pay for things these days. And actually, in some sense, China has gotten some edge. Like, Didi can run. It's illegal in China. Apple gave them $1 billion. So one of the advantages of Hong Kong is actually having sort of a base where there's a strong base of legal rule and also innovative regulation should be an advantage. Hong Kong itself should market. So from your organization's point of view, how do you kind of collaborate or, with the government to make sure that those regulations catch up with the innovations that are going on in Hong Kong?
I think this is a very important question about regulatory and government adaptation. By the way, first of all, Science Park, Hong Kong Science Park, our governing body is actually the government, Innovation Technology Bureau. So I talk to Nick Yang all the time. And you know that Nick Yang, the secretary, is very pro-technology. And one of the reasons why the government set up the ITB is just because of that, trying to drive new ideas in the government. Granted, the government is always slow and resistant to new technology, and they, like I said, it's not because they resist technology, it's just they don't know how to deal with it. The ITB is there to educate them, and when you ask me how the Science Park can help it, is that one of the 4 or 5 important strategies for me as a Science Park is to turn the Science Park into a test bed. I want people to try things in Hong Kong in the Science Park. So what I'm doing is I'm actually setting up a sandbox in Science Park for fintech, for people to play with Bitcoin, blockchain, regulatory, a sandbox, meaning that it's a confined space, you want to test whatever. But from a software standpoint, that's one thing that we do. And the other thing we do is that we have an open data studio. We ask people to come in, put data on the open data platform, open and secured, so that people can try with all kinds of data. So I got data from bus companies, from some hospitals. What I do is to try to push the boundary and let people test things out. For example, another thing I'm doing is I'm setting up Hong Kong Science Park as a 5G test platform. So companies are coming in and install the antenna, and I just talked to a guy called doing Sigfox, kind of the latest technology communication. So the way that I want to do is to turn the Science Park into a smart city, a test bed. And by the way, I've been talking to my guys and say that if there's going to be a first autonomous driving car in Hong Kong, it has to be in Science Park. But I have to deal with the transport department, which is I'm not going to, it's recorded, so I'm not going to say anything. But you have to help them see the future, and from Science Park standpoint, even Cyberport. I'm working with Cyberport a lot in the fintech area. That sandbox, give it a try. At the same time, I'm also trying to work with the bureau to educate the different departments in figuring out what are the regulatory things that you can deal with, and bring in experts from North America. Actually, but I just did a stem cell conference 2 weeks ago, bringing experts, regulatory experts, to talk to the Hong Kong regulatory experts. So various things that we do.
Thanks very much, Mark Michelson from IMA Asia. Just want to follow up on that question and also ask you another one. But government, you mentioned some of the other places that are doing technology around Asia, Singapore, various cities in China and so on. Government plays a pretty proactive role. And just the issue you brought up, what happens in a place like Singapore, and I'm not saying Singapore is perfect, but what happens is they have an institutional setup. So it includes regulations, includes all parts of government, includes a lot of advisors from GE and other companies that are active in Singapore. And if they see something, they try to deal with those issues and look forward. And so they welcome companies that sometimes Hong Kong doesn't welcome, that are innovative, that might test a regulatory situation because they see it as a way of pushing Singapore forward.
Yeah.
Do you think that's important, and do you think Hong Kong is moving in that direction? Or you mentioned innovation, and I think you're on the right track, but a long way to go, especially with the rest of the government. You mentioned one of the bureaus.
Right. I got to admit that at the beginning, I said that I'm not a civil servant, so I still have to learn how to work like a civil servant, and I try not to. The government definitely plays a big role in the future of Hong Kong, definitely, and I'm seeing the changes. Those of you who have met with Nick Young, you realize that he's not a typical civil servant. He's very pro-business. He came from businesses. He came from the investment community. So I would argue that the government is putting new blood into this particular area and bringing people from totally different views. I think this is the right track. Government plays a big role. I would also argue the other point, the other extreme, is that yeah, Singapore and Shenzhen, they throw money at it when they want to do something. Singapore, when they want to do robotics, they throw 300 million Singapore dollars into doing robotics. But in most cases, I would argue that the government is a bad investor. In most cases, I would argue that government should not tell us what to do. A government should just give the policy and lead us in the right certain direction and let the businesses, let the industry go with it. Think about Silicon Valley. Government doesn't interfere anything. The thrive of Silicon Valley is really based many different factors: the University of Stanford, the mindset, but most importantly, the investment community. I go to San Francisco once. I'm going to San Francisco next week, and there's a lot of investors. I think the even more important factor is about the investors. This is one of the things that I'm trying to build in Hong Kong, in the Science Park. There's no lack of money in Hong Kong. There's no lack of rich people who want to look at new investment in Hong Kong. But do they come to Hong Kong these days for venture capital investment? Not so much. But I want to bring them back. I think this is the kind of cycle we want to build. I agree that the government should do a lot more, and I think the government is doing it. But at the same time, the other big equation is the investment community. I always say that the government is a bad investor. And in most cases, they don't make the right decisions. I hope they do, but the investors, they will always make the right decisions because they will prune out the bad ones. All right, so I'm not answering the question, but this is the kind of way I'm looking at. Okay.
Hi, I'm George Russell from the CPA magazine. If there's a perception that Hong Kong is going to have fewer political freedoms, is there any connection with attracting talent, attracting people who may not consider moving here, critical thinking, imagination? Is there any worry about that it could affect the brain power here?
The biggest challenge I've seen in the past 1 year in building innovation technology in Hong Kong is not the lack of talents, it's the mindset. Hong Kong has no lack of good science, math, engineering talents. But do they really, well, even if they study engineering, when they graduate, do they really go into that area? Most, they don't. Because it's easier to make money as an auditor or go to the bank, right? I think that's the mindset change. So I don't think there's a lack of talents. I think that it is the mindset that technology could be a future. I think the other thing that I've seen quite a bit is that, I actually have an argument with one of the legislators about 2 weeks ago, is that 20 years ago, a graduate from engineering in IT, for example, computer science would be the most difficult faculty to get into. Everybody wants to get into it. But a lot of these students, when they graduate, they become the IT support, which doesn't make you a lot of money. But the real IT technology is not about support, it's about writing algorithm, doing data analytics. It's about writing the accounting software, for example, or the management software. I think the question is, how do we direct these talents into those higher value-added activities? Instead of, think about the IT thing, is support or the data analytics. A support engineer, you can hire for 15,000 Hong Kong dollars per month, roughly 20,000. Experienced one, 30,000. Data analytics, fresh graduate, 30,000. Or I keep telling the IT guys that if you want to go into IT, that's okay, but at least learn about accounting, right? So at least you know when you program, you're programming something useful rather than just programming. So I think that's the next echelon, next level that a young youngster has to think about, rather than I'm good in engineering and mathematics, but I want to go to a financial businesses. So I think there's no lack of talent, but the question is, how does the whole environment, whole society think of it? And I think I'm really positive about that, but that's a challenge. Okay.
Coming back to the investors that you were talking about earlier.
Can you give your name, please?
Yes, I'm Alexandra Tracy, and I run Hoiping Ventures in Hong Kong. So talking about investors, there's been a lot of concern in the media and in some quarters about the low number of technology IPOs or fundraising on the market here in Hong Kong. I think last year it was 3% of IPOs were in the technology sector, and we're still very focused on financial services. Yeah. I mean, I think there are lots of reasons for this. Not necessarily that the exchange is in the wrong, but we don't have a Silicon Valley, we don't have the kind of VC industry that exists in the US, and maybe that's part of the role that you're seeking to take, and I'd be interested in your views on that. And then the other question would be, what should we do? And I do have a link with the stock exchange here. What would you want to see us do to encourage companies to do their IPOs here in Hong Kong as opposed to somewhere else?
Great. Can I have your business card afterwards? Yeah. The VC, I think you know better than me that we have a number of VCs in Hong Kong. I think there's a lot of work to do, gathering this money and let them look at it. It is still a journey that we need to take on. Let me answer the second part of the question about the stock exchange. Our chairperson, Fanny Law, she's been talking to the stock exchange as well. I think what we need is probably a better jam board. I think you know what I mean, right? Because a lot of technology is pre-revenue or pre-profit. Nowadays, there's no exit. So we go to A round, B round, and C round, then what do you do with it? I think that's one of the bigger reasons, because a lot of the technology are pre-revenue, well, pre-profit. And we don't have we need a renewed jam board. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, because in Taiwan is developing that, in US, this is a very conducive environment that we need. In terms of VCs, we have a number of VCs in Hong Kong. We're also channeling a number of the China money into Hong Kong. I'm still also trying to work on the U.S. West Coast kind of money, but that would be a tougher one. The China fund is pretty active in Hong Kong. I know a number of people, also Alibaba and a few others. So there's a lot of work to do. So it's not easy, but we have to work on it. Yeah.
I think we have some questions here.
So actually, my question was a follow-on from the Singapore one. So I agree with you.
Sorry again, can you please give your name?
Sorry, Ian Reid. I'm a technology entrepreneur. I'm also do some freelance writing. So just going back to the Singapore, I agree with you that the government's not a good investor. And I think Singapore wastes a lot of money. We don't hear about it because they don't talk about the failures, right? They only talk about the successes. But you mentioned Silicon Valley. Now, Silicon Valley actually had a lot of government support at the beginning, maybe not as an investor, but as a customer. So a lot of that original innovation was based on defense spending. They spent a lot of money on defense, and a lot of that technology was developed originally for defense. Now, obviously, we don't have a defense industry in Hong Kong, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on maybe the government being a better customer for innovators and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing that we are doing. Again, the Science Park is in a strange or unique position. We are a government statutory body, but we run like a commercial organization, and we connect with the government a lot. So a lot of things that we do is to connect the innovators in Hong Kong to the government departments. Actually, the government is coming up with things like public trial scheme. Government is usually, especially Hong Kong government, I don't know if it's especially, but Hong Kong government are very slow in adopting technology because they always have to go through a tendering process. Actually, one of the I don't know if it's funny story, is that one of our technology guys was pitching to hospital authority and sell one of his product. But when writing the tender, the guy was saying, can you take out all those unique features so I can have a tender? You take out the unique features so they can invite 3 tenderers. So there's no unique feature, so how do you test new technology? So the government is coming up with we call the PSTS, Public Sector Trial Scheme, that bypass some of these procedures and actually fund this new technology to be used by the government department. So our job in the science park is to find these guys in science park, cyberport, or the nest or whatever, and connect them with the government department. And I actually run a number of we call it technology from science park kind of events, where big companies like MTR, Airport Authority, will come here. I will present 10 companies to them. They will pick out whatever technology they want to adapt to. Actually, Airport Authority has been here like 4 or 5 times. They're adapting some technology that they never thought about available. So we play a big role in connecting that, but we cannot compare with the defense budget. But at least we want to connect them with the biggest customer in Hong Kong, the government. It's not easy, but again, it's not supposed to be easy. That's why they pay me so much money to do this. Not so much. But.
Hi, Peter Ryan, the Consul General of Ireland. Thanks, Albert. This is very interesting. I think one of the things that we have in common certainly is scale between Ireland and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And one of the features of one of the areas we've tried to look at is the connectivity between the third level sector, the state-funded research sector, the private sector research sector, our existing multinationals, and people like yourselves. Can you talk a little bit about the connectivity between Science Park and the third level sector in particular here, and what you're doing to try to deepen those connections and to help a pathway for the startup that's on campus, startup that we hear about at the Science and Technology University and the other colleges, and how you're going to translate them into the companies that will stay and grow in Hong Kong rather than sell out at the first opportunity. And
yeah.
Thanks.
I was talking about Science Park running a incubation program of, right now we have 250 companies. I would say more than half of them come from the universities in Hong Kong. When I was in University of Hong Kong, I never thought about starting my own companies because that's 500 years ago. But nowadays with the young guys, they actually think a lot about entrepreneurship, starting their own company. And actually the government has funding to universities to do that. And there are a lot of events that are happening, such as pitch night, competition, hackathon, things like that are happening. I've attended a number of them. If you're interested, you should look for them. You should just go there and sit and listen to these guys presenting. By the way, one of the things that is interesting, about 2 months ago, we ran a world elevator tour. And we rented a 101, I think you were there. You were the judges, yeah, I remember. It was a fun event. The entrepreneur has 1 minute to pitch his idea. That's the elevator ride from ground floor to 101, floor 101 in the ICC. And we have 300 applicants. We ended up with 100 participants, and 10 were given the final opportunity to present for 3 minutes. The youngest one was a 19-year-old from Hong Kong Youth. When I thought about when I was 19-year-old, I didn't know anything. I mean, but he was nervous given, but it was a very, very interesting. So my point is that there's a lot of things happening in Hong Kong, including events like that. And the universities are also pushing for that. And a lot of industries, a lot of big companies, for example, like TCL, CLP, they are also running a lot of these innovation programs. By the way, one of the things that I did when I was in GE was to create incubation program within the company. And at that time, we actually thinking about entrepreneurship within a big multinational. That's an oxymoron. And big companies are thinking about it now because it is a survival. Because if you confine a GE or Intel into whatever you've been doing the past 200 years, you'll be dead. You'll be irrelevant. A lot of banks are looking at it that way. So many forces, universities, big multinationals, industries, government bodies are all thinking about it in that direction. So we try to be in the middle of all these and try to make it happen.
Thank you. I would just, Sorry, Mandy. Okay, one quick one. Okay.
Very quick one. It's about Siwa Lang has invested, poured more money, billions, into offering this investment fund to support especially startups, this new co-investment. No one quite knows how that's going to work, but I think the startups that have been interviewed, they don't even bother to try to apply for it because there's just too many hoops to jump through, which is kind of the similar story with other investment funds for different sectors. Is there any way improving that, or what's the future of this co-investment fund? How are they going to access that capital?
Yeah, the one that you talked about is we call the ITVF, Innovation Technology Venture Fund, which is a $2 billion Hong Kong dollars fund, and it's a co-investment fund. The idea is to sign agreement with investors. Actually, I think what you said is not totally correct, because the application to get that fund, you don't get the fund from the government. You get the fund from the partner. For example, an ABC VC, a company, a VC, would be signing master agreement with the government, and that VC will be investing. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're a startup, you're applying through that VC, not the government. The government, lack of better words, is basically a co-investor. So if you run that fund, and we sign an agreement with you, you invest, I will just follow, unless it is politically or PR disaster. Otherwise, if the government signs an agreement with you, you will go with it. So I don't believe that the government bureaucracy will apply to those applications. However, still, it is government. There will be bureaucracy when you apply for like incubation program, but these are the things that we have to jump through, and we're helping them in terms of Science Park. Okay.
Albert, I'd just like to ask you one very last question. Could you please talk a bit about the employment at the park? Because you've got it has generated jobs. Also, what you were saying just before lunch was the incentives for having interns and the kind of profile of interns that you have.
I was talking about, at the moment in the Science Park, we have 12,000 plus people working in the Science Park with 600 plus companies. We run a jobs fair every March. By the way, one is coming up in March. Last year, we have about 200 companies advertising with 1,000 jobs. So there's a lot of need for technology people in the Science Park. By the way, we talk about when there of every 2 R&D research and development people in Hong Kong, one of them will be working in the Science Park. So that's how many that are there. So we generate a lot of employment, especially for the R&D people, and we have jobs fair coming up in March, and if yourself or children are interested, you should join. The one that Eric was talking about is the government has a new internship program that if you are a small medium enterprise, you can apply for the internship funding, where the government will fund you 13,000 to 16,000 Hong Kong dollars per month per head. If you hire a intern who is a postgraduate R&D person. If it's a master or PhD student, government will fund you 13,000 to 16,000 per month. But that person cannot be doing photocopying. Has to be R&D and has to be at least 6 months. The idea is to make sure that the small enterprises can leverage the talents from Hong Kong, and also the postgraduate student. We believe that if they get stuck with 6 months of R&D work, they will get stuck there forever. That's one of the things to address the question we're talking about, that we want the young guys to go there. So government is doing a lot of things, and we are trying to also generate some employment and push people in that direction. Okay?
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.